You are live.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone, to the joint meeting of the House General and Housing Committee and the Senate Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. The testimony today is focused on the federal government and the impact of federal cuts. Would you just go out and let Allison know that we're starting? Thank you. It's focusing on the impact of federal cuts. And we heard from our federal delegate representatives of the federal delegation. Then we heard from updates from basically state agencies as they were affected. And now in Vermont, we rely very heavily on nonprofit housing providers to talk to us, to fill a lot of gaps and carry out a lot of state programs on the local level. And so we have 5 representatives to talk, 4, and then 1 more from Let's Build Homes to talk to us. So our first witness is going to be Nancy Owen, president of Evernorth. Nancy, we have about half an hour for all of these witnesses. Just letting you know, I'm sorry to be a little heavy-handed, but I'm trying to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak.
Yeah.
So take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having us. Thanks for the opportunity to share what's going on. Evernorth is a nonprofit that works in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. We have 2 big roles in housing. One is we're a tax credit syndicator raising capital from investors who are purchasing low-income housing tax credits. That's a program Mara talked to you a little bit about, and I have a couple other things to add on that piece. The other is then Vermont we're a real estate developer, and we co-develop and co-own properties with a lot of the other nonprofits in the state. We currently have 10 projects that are under construction with 290 apartments from West Brattleboro to St. Johnsbury, and another 255 homes under construction. So
Nancy, am I right? I just want to confirm. My impression is that if a local nonprofit housing developer has a project, chances are you're involved, either as a syndicator or an advisor or some other way.
Yeah, in the field of the low-income housing tax credit, because our partners in the state do so much other work outside of that particular program. They're doing all kinds of other housing, home ownership and smaller rentals and some special needs housing. But on the low-income housing tax credit side, which is the multifamily, Evernorth is involved in 70 to 90% of the projects, either as an investor or as a co-developer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a breadth, and we work, as I said, across 3 states. So we see other things happening. And I just would say, so my comments are going to focus on the federal impacts to that tax credit housing, the low-income housing tax credit problems, and especially in that development phase. Because my colleagues who are here are going to maybe talk more about operationally and from the portfolio. Real estate developers hate uncertainty, and that's the kind of period that we're in right now. We know how to manage risk. We know how to calculate, risk and do things, but when there's uncertainty, that's very different, and that's the environment we're in that makes things very hard. Folks have already talked a lot about the Section 8 and this impact on housing. I just want to give you a very specific example to kind of ground you in that story about what the purpose of the Section 8 project-based vouchers are and how they impact our ability to build. Again, I'm on the development side, so build new homes. So we are in the process in the pre-development side of building homes in Heinsberg, Riggs Meadow. It's a proposed 36 units of housing. It has most of its funding in place, and it's scheduled to start construction in April of 2026. That project, when we conceived of it and got it approved, included 12 project-based vouchers, so a contract for 12 vouchers. That contract gives us really the ability to finance more of the project through debt. And so we have a contract that's 20 years long that gives us a rent that we know that we're going to achieve. And so with that revenue that we're earning from under the contract, we can borrow more money. In this instance, you look at just like a 6% interest rate on a mortgage and a 20-year term, we could borrow $2.85 million with the project-based voucher. Without the vouchers in place, the rents are going to fall. We won't have as much revenue, and we can only borrow $2 million. So we just lost $850,000 of permanent financing from a private source, right, from a bank or someone that's contributing to that total development cost.
That's a great example.
So that's just want to ground you in the numbers. So when we have a gap like that, we have to find a solution. We have to figure out how to do that. And some of those solutions, you can't always cut costs all the way to that solution. You have to find new resources to fill that gap. Maybe some better terms, better financing, some other things that we're going to do. But that's going to take us time to figure that out. Will we be on schedule to start that construction in April or not? What do we have to give up in order to get that building built? And sometimes projects can't ever get to that financeable stage. The developer might have to put their own equity capital in. Somehow that gap has to be filled. So that's a big problem on the capital side. I think you've already heard some testimony that, the other side is that without that project-based voucher, we're not housing people exiting from homelessness. We're not housing people at the lowest income because now we can't subsidize the difference between what that person earns and what the maximum rent is allowed. So we're losing that opportunity to house some of the people that we have been housing. But project-based vouchers really can unlock an entire capital stack. They can make the difference between getting to that closing table and starting construction and not. This comes to this question of leverage, which we talk about a lot when we're here talking about why the state is funding affordable housing. We have three sources, right? We have private capital with the equity capital. We have the federal funds we've been talking about. And then we have the state gap financing that flows through the Vermont Housing Conservation Board or programs at VHFA or at the state agency. And that gap financing is essential to unlock the federal credits. Mara mentioned the 4% credit and the growth, that opportunity. My opinion, the real problem with the problem why we might not be able to use that new opportunity is that there's not enough gap financing to get us to close the gap, to get to a fully financed 4% deal.
Okay, so because we've been hearing testimony today that the tax credits emerged from Congress in better shape with the increase. But what you're saying is, but you need the vouchers, you need state gap financing.
Yes.
It can't be filled entirely by private.
Right.
Private financing.
There's always a leverage that's needed.
And what you're saying is you're worried that the bill won't have the gap financing to use the tax credits.
Well, for the 4% credit for sure, that's because, as Maura noted, that's a smaller credit subsidy. And so the difference, in needs is greater. The 9% credit, the gap financing is still there and is still required from the state. Just to give you an idea, Bay Ridge, which was a property that Gus put up on the screen, has 94 homes. It's a mix of rental housing and home ownership, developed in Shelburne, just opened, beautiful new property. That the state, through the kinds of dollars that you appropriate, provided 15% of the financing. About 40%, I don't know, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but a good portion, 45-50% was from private equity. And then the balance was the federal funds. So the state is bringing dollars to the table, but it is leveraging this private capital. And frankly, if we don't, if we, as a tax credit syndicator, so wearing a slightly different hat, Evernorth has raised and spent $140 million in Vermont over the last 4 years in private capital from investors. We raised, I think, about 470 million for the 3 states, and about a third of it has come to Vermont. But investors can only invest if the projects are here. Investors can only invest if we're getting to the closing table with a tax credit transaction, and we can't get to the closing table without state support and project-based vouchers. So
Yeah.
that's
Most projects.
trying to like simplify the message, but
No, that was a great illustration.
okay.
Nancy, the gap financing, what you're talking about is all the sources of state, VHCV and other sources of whatever it is that allows some
State tax
entity-
credits, downtown credits,
whatever to put,
VHCB funding.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So the good news is that we did get this increase in the 9% credit. That is good news. There were other changes in the tax bill that, the bill that passed this spring. And so that's helpful. The other thing is Fannie Mae, who Maura noted is the biggest investor in the country, Fannie and Freddie Mac, also got an increase. They're allowed to invest more of their capital, twice as much capital as they had previously, and they're an investor of ours. And so that's good news. They're coming into our next fund at a higher amount. They're investing $15 million in our next fund, so that's terrific. The other thing I would just say that got approved in that bill that's important and not a housing related exactly, but was the New Market Tax Credit Program, another federal program that we use was made permanent. And so that's good news. That's a program that is used to finance community development and manufacturing. And we've done a lot of investments across Vermont in projects that have included housing, like the Putnam Block down in Bennington and the Brooks House in Brattleboro, as well as, groups like YMCA, the King Street Center, Chroma Technology, and Weidman. So it's a really great program, and we're glad that it's been made a permanent program of the federal government. The bad news side of that is with the shutdown, the agency that operates that program is the CDFI. They were on the verge of making the latest awards. Evernorth is waiting to hear if we'll get an award to continue. And there's no answer because the government is shut down. And they've also riffed their staff as of mid-December, so we don't know what that's going to happen. I want to know what else. One other, just other impacts on the federal shutdown are delays. We haven't seen any delays to projects in development in Vermont, but I am aware we have, I think, 8 closings between now and the end of the year across the 3 states, and 2 of them outside of Vermont are held up because they're waiting for contracts from the federal government, USDA RD, in order to get to closing and to transfer, and they have to sign off on that, and so those projects are delayed. But I have not seen any of that kind of delay here. The other, I mentioned uncertainty, and one of the things that we're seeing is the tariffs, and that those have just fluctuated, all over the place, whether the country, the material, the percent amount, and that kind of uncertainty causes costs to rise because the contractor has got to protect themselves against that and mitigate against that. But just as one example, we had an elevator installation recently at a project that's under construction, and there was a $17,000 tariff tagged onto that. At another project that just a month or 2 earlier, same general contractor, same type of elevator, the tariff on it was $6,000. The numbers are just changing all the time. We don't know what the tariffs will be. So that's kind of uncertainty makes things challenging.
Thank you. We are just about out.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you.
Questions? Thank you.
Lots, but
Yeah. Michael, Monty, Director of Community Relations from Champlain Housing Trust. And Chris, are you going to join?
I'm just
Chris
gonna,
Lee.
I'm just gonna lead off and do a quick introduction.
Okay,
Chris Donnelly with the Champlain Housing Trust. Michael will give the bulk of our remarks, but what we'll talk about is getting more into the impacts on the people that we serve, not just some of the development that you've been hearing about, the people that we serve, and then some other potential external risks that we're facing or preparing for. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Michael.
Thanks. So thank you for the committee for this time. I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
we can.
Excellent, great.
We can even see you.
That was the scary part, but thank you. Appreciate it. Both Gus and Nancy talked about our ribbon cutting in Shelburne, and that was great. 68 apartments, 26 homes. That resource really was, as Nancy talked about, was really leveraged by federal resources, 17 different sources of funding, leveraging state resources to a very small percentage of the overall funding. So those loss of federal resources really are going to have an impact overall on the sort of the level of development that we could occur. We have not 200 or so apartments that are recently completed or nearing completion or soon under construction, all of them leveraging quite a few resources from the with federal resources. I think again with important important state funding to all of it. I do want to say that we do, of the 94 apartments that we leased up last year, more than 1 in 4 went to people who are homeless. We now house over 500 people who are formerly homeless. So we continue on that path and continue to support the development of shelters throughout the state. But all of this work doesn't happen without federal resources. They're leveraged, though, again, by significant state and local resources. There will be broad impacts on our development, without a doubt. Right now, we are riding the wave, I think, of the last 2 or 3 years. And really, the short-term issue of loss of vouchers is one thing, but we really are planning and thinking about 6 months, 9 months, 1 year from now, and how we can move this level of development that we have been doing with the federal resources that might be missing and the state resources that are continuing to be needed. Cuts in home, CDBG, and other programs will have an impact. The pullback on energy funds in the middle of all that last year really had an impact. I would just want to shout out again to, like, as everybody has, to Vermont State Housing Authority. The plan to address the retraction of vouchers is great. Nearly half of our residents, actually more than that, rely on vouchers. Many of them are working. So out of the $38 million that we receive in rent receivables, about $12 million come from vouchers. And so we are both supporting homeless folks, those 500 folks who come in, many of them maybe who move on to working. We're both supporting homeless folks coming into our portfolio and the need for vouchers for that, but also the fact that many of the people who are in our housing are working, not quite making enough, and need the voucher really to help them sort of make their payment. We are thankful for the lawmakers on working on SNAP and LIHEAP. These are critical resources for low-income people, Vermonters. Immediately when we heard about the SNAP program ending, we met a few weeks ago. We met again yesterday, thinking about what was going to be impacting our tenants. 33% of our tenants, according to our survey, feel food insecurity. Tenants right now are choosing between whether they eat or pay rent. We know that what I could tell you is that in a few months, we're going to see if there's an impact on us as an organization in terms of rent receivables. We're going to do the best we can. We continue to provide resources to our tenants in terms of food security opportunities where they might be able to replace the SNAP benefits in short term. We also run a couple of food shelves ourselves. Another is healthcare and the impact on our tenants in terms of the higher cost of healthcare is really impactful. And again, most of our tenants, decent number of our tenants feel that physical health is good or excellent, but the other half need support and need those resources. I'm aware of the time that you have. Let me just say this. Every time there's an ICE raid somewhere in the state, our contractors find themselves slowing down in terms of the work that they need to do. We find people walking, not really showing up, or we're concerned about it. Most of the workers, there's a mix of workers, but I could tell you that as a proud a son of an immigrant family, I know and we know that immigrants who come legally to the U.S. Work hard, but they're scared. And ICE raids really have had an impact on slowing down construction and concern about construction of our contractors in terms of that impact. That's nothing that you can replace, but I did want to put it out there that that is something that's important. Thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Questions from committee. Michael, I do want to ask you to repeat a statistic. Did you say 12 million of 38 million total? Is that your monthly rent receipts?
Oh, God, Jesus, no. Yearly.
Yearly? I was saying, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
but it's a third.
Yeah.
It's a decent amount. Yeah. Now again, half of our tenants, more than half of our tenants, and I'll get you the specific dollar amounts, and I'm using round numbers. More than half of our tenants use vouchers. Some only use a couple $100, a few $100 to get by. Some who are homeless really need a lot of support, and they might only have $200 or $300 to actually pay in, and so that difference is really significantly higher. We have that. I could have that breakdown. We've taken a look at the breakdown. When the federal government was talking about eliminating vouchers, we began immediately to assess, well, what does that mean? What do we have to do? How do we fix that? We couldn't fix it. Really, frankly, we couldn't fix it. The only choice was to come to you and say, we're going to need to figure out how to replace that program because it's so impactful on Vermonters. But we were able to sort of do an assessment of those values, and can provide you with more detail as time goes on.
I'd just add that in our portfolio, we have over 200 shelter beds or motel rooms, people that are experiencing homelessness. They are not moving out of those rooms or out of the shelters without a voucher. And that's being funded by the state, much of it. And so we're going to continue to use our money that way instead of the permanent solution.
So in other words, the vouchers are the central.
Yeah.
The vouchers are the central tool.
They're a stepping stone for folks who are homeless to
For
become
homeless.
permanently housed. They are a stopgap and a support for people who are working, who perhaps can't really make the difference, even in our housing, where they're working a very minimum wage job or they're just starting out, in a new job. They're not making enough and they're getting a little bit of support. It's really that range. We have people, of course, who are disabled or Social Security who are getting vouchers. That's an important part of who we serve as well, right? So.
Right, and that's why it's so key to VHIP, so that we tie all these. I mean, it's a key piece of-
Absolutely. All of our programs are using rely on some level of rent. Now, a good majority of our folks pay their rent. They're working, they're workforce housing, and so that is also true. So it's really a wide range and a mix. There's not just one or the other, but I think if we really want to get to a point where we're solving and resolving issues around homelessness, we're not going to be able to do that without some voucher program assisting us moving along.
They're
Be
key.
support to the vouchers.
They are clearly key to the ramp out of homelessness.
Absolutely. Key.
Yeah.
Happy to come back and chat more, send more information.
I have a feeling we'll be seeing you again.
Okay. Sorry I couldn't be there.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So our next witness is Angie Harbin, and Angie is Executive Director of Down Street Housing, which, as I understand it, is a growing organization.
We are growing, yes. So as Mark mentioned, Angie Harbin, Executive Director of Down Street Housing and Community Development. For those of you who might not be familiar with Down Street, we serve Orange, Washington, and Lamoille counties. We create permanently affordable homes, a full array of homeownership services, housing-based supportive services, and this year we started operating a homeless services hotel. I've got about 13 minutes of comments and I'm going to get down to 5 minutes. Fortunately, I think you have heard a lot of what I have to say from other speakers. I am going to lean into the importance of subsidies, rent subsidies, just so critical to the work that we do. So when the Housing Finance Agency put out their most recent housing needs assessment, we started going through that. Like, who are we serving? What do they need? What are the rents that we need to be shooting for to meet the housing needs in this group? So in that 3-county area, there's 13,000 renters. Downstreet's income range serves 80% of those individuals. And I kind of bucketed that 80% into 4 or 5 categories. So there's that first category, under $20,000 a year. These are fixed income folks that absolutely need a subsidy to have safe, stable housing. And then you have category 2, you're hitting that $20,000 to $35,000 a year. You still got fixed income folks in that mix, but you also have, your minimum wage full-time worker, that's $28,000 a year. So you definitely have full-time incomes in that group. And affordable rent for that minimum wage full-time worker is $700 a month. Downstreet has like 10 $700 a month rentals in our entire portfolio, and we're the affordable housing provider for this area. So we know that in reality, a lot of folks are paying a lot more. Some may manage without that rental subsidy, but for families, these are the tough choices. This is when you hear about the kiddos showing up at school without enough to eat. They're choosing rent over all of the other basic needs that they need to meet. So right now we're at like 30 to 40% of our renters. The next 2 categories get into that like backbone of our local workforce. So category 3, $35,000 to $50,000 a year. We did an analysis of all of the 16,000 jobs that are currently advertised on Indeed right now. 50% of them are in this range. It's that $35,000 to $50,000 a year. This is who we need to house. These are who we need the people we need working in Central Vermont. So again, this is 16 to 22% of renters. They can afford rents from about $875 to $1,250 a month. Now we're moving into $875 to $1,250 a month.
Who are these people?
Not on 45,000 each.
What, what's their job they occupy?
So
Here's for example.
yeah, $35,000 to $50,000 a year. We're looking at a lot of our service workers. And this is above minimum wage, our childcare providers, hospitality. We're still in that kind of lower end of full-time work. And this is where you find a lot of your single moms with a couple of kiddos trying to figure things out. This is a really hard place to be. And so, when we define affordable rent as 30% of a household's gross income, technically these groups can afford $875 to $1,250 a month, which is, really tough. And your chances of finding rents at $875 to $1,250 a month, almost zero. And then we're moving on to, and this is hard when you think about affordable housing. This is our core group. This next group, $50,000 to $75,000 a month. This is when we're targeting our affordable rates. We're hitting this income group. So these are our teachers, our tradespeople, our health care workers. These are maybe the dual income households, our solid middle income households, and they can afford technically rents from $1,250 to $1,875 a month. Last year, Downstreet we started construction on 69 new homes. Our 2-bedroom rents in that group were right around $1,500 a month. That means this is the only group out of the 4 that we just talked about that can afford a 2-bedroom affordable rent in Central Vermont. And in this group we've just discussed, that 75% of all renters in Orange, Washington, and Lamoille counties. So this group all needs affordable housing. And over half of them need a rent subsidy to truly afford that affordable housing. So talking about those 69 units that we started construction on, 28 of them, so that's 40% of the total unit count, had project-based subsidies associated with them. So we were sure that we were kind of mimicking the 30 to 40% of folks in our region that need project-based rent subsidies in order to afford their housing. So this is a big deal, right? next year, if this, oh, go ahead.
I'm stopping you just because this is very helpful and I want to make sure we're clear. You outlined 4 groups. One was the people who are on fixed incomes of less than 20,000. Second is 20 to 35,000 minimum wage, some for full-time. And the third was 30 to 50K.
Yep.
Now, when you say those first 3 are what percentage of your total? Or was it the first 2? You had a percentage of your total.
The first 2 is about 30 to 40%. And those are folks who absolutely are not affording rent without a subsidy.
Yeah.
And then your next group, these are your full-time workers. Most of them actually qualify for a subsidy. They're not likely to access them necessarily, but they do qualify. And affordable housing is very, very hard to come by. Fourth group, they can afford affordable housing. So we've finally hit that.
But the third group is about like what percent?
16 to 20%.
15 to 20?
16 to 22% of renters is that third group in our 3-county area. So we're just talking about central Vermont.
And so the balance is this group 4, which is what percentage?
16 to 22%. So combined, these 4 groups get 75% of all renters
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in these 3 counties.
Yeah, I mean, just remember, everybody, that an average renter earns like $17 an hour with an income of about 36,000 a year. And to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in fair market rent, you have to be earning $29.75 an hour. There is the discrepancy that we are challenged with.
This is the point that we're trying to make. And if we don't have those subsidies, we don't have affordable rents. The 69 units we started construction on, we've got 40% of those with subsidies. That's great. Next year, stars align, and by stars, I mean funding. We'll start construction on another 78 units. That's really great. We were planning on 27 of those having rent subsidies, either through the Vermont State Housing Authority, the Barrie Housing Authority, or Continuum of Care. We're not sure any of those are going to be available, which means we're creating housing for that kind of 3rd, 4th, and there's a 5th group even that we hit with the rents that we provide. But we're missing half our renters.
But I would just like to put a pin on it for our committees, that this is we have 2 pieces here, what it costs and what people can afford.
Yep.
And we have to address both. And if we don't address how they can afford it, we're remiss.
100%.
Thank you.
And that's the 10,000 renters. So this is the 75%. That's 10,000 of the renters. They need below market rents. 5,000 of those right now in central Vermont are paying above 30% of their income for rent. 2,000 are paying over 50% of their incomes for rent. So people are really, really struggling. And then Michael did a really great job at talking about that impact on our housing operations, our operations as an organization. Like Michael, we're about 50% of our revenue is coming from, actually 50% of our tenants are using Section 8 vouchers or some sort of rent subsidy to cover their rent. It's about 41% of our revenue. If we don't have that, we're jeopardizing not just the stability of these individuals, but the stability of our housing and our operations as an organization. I know we're all talking about SNAP benefits right now. I'm having COVID flashbacks. Like every day I'm updating something to figure out what's going on. And I cannot imagine what that feels like if you're the person who needs some food and you're not sure what's happening from day to day about those resources. I know you have some really, really difficult choices. Oh, go ahead.
I hate to ask this, but I can't help myself. 41% of your revenue is coming from Section 8.
Some sort of housing subsidy.
Subsidy from housing or similar subsidy. What would your organization look like without it?
I should say rental revenue specifically.
Yeah.
And that would be rental revenues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a much lower amount than what our actual organizational operating budget are. We keep those somewhat separate. So I think what our organization would look like if we lost those rental subsidies was all of our energy and efforts going into figuring out what we're doing with folks who are living in our housing and how we're keeping housing projects above board. we're not doing anything else. I mean, we're then at that point, we were talking about VHIP earlier. That's not a project we're investing a ton of time in or a ton of effort or resources because we are really going to have to focus on, what our core mission is making sure all of these folks stay housed. And jeopardizing that is it's a big piece, and it also jeopardizes housing for all of the folks who don't have subsidies because we can't afford to operate the housing that they're living in. So that's, that's the maintenance, that's the safe, stable, affordable housing that is our mission.
What happens to a project? Let's say a project was built because of the commitment of a certain number of Section 8 vouchers. So it's built. And then the Section 8 vouchers go away.
I'd like to.
How does that unwind?
I don't know. What did Michael say? We looked at and we tried to figure out what to do, and then we realized there's nothing we can do, and we were going to have to come to you. We have projects that are 100% subsidized. I mean, everybody who's living in the project has subsidized rents. If suddenly that was gone, we have very little in the way of operating funds.
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in,
Yes,
we
please.
stress
Sure,
tested.
of course.
There's no solution.
Yeah.
We really came up with, really, there isn't. When we looked at when the idea of the voucher program disappearing, we looked at it and we said, oh my God. And once we knew that it was actually going to be funded at 90% or 95%, we said, okay, that's better than losing everything, and we'll see what happens. And that's what we're facing really right now in terms of the pullback. But this is better than a complete elimination of the program. It's a little bit like you knocked your head against a wall and then you stopped. Oh, this feels great. But the worst we avoided the worst that can happen at this point. So that's really, I think that's where we're at.
And that 90% number puts every single one of Downstreet's projects underwater. Like if we just reduced 90% of subsidies, our margins are so thin across the board that we cannot manage that going forward.
And if a project is underwater, it means you're not paying the private debt.
Best case scenario, we just stop paying private debt, sure.
And then,
And then we can.
and then the private, and then of course, the mortgagee can come in and take the unit if they want.
Well, and Nancy can talk to too what that looks like about our ability to continue to develop. We don't, if we start,
No one would lend to you.
No one-
Don't pay our.
Megan, yes, I think so. I saw him out there, but,
Moreau.
Moreau.
Moreau's
Oh,
here.
He's here.
Here.
Sorry, I didn't see him.
But.
Right here.
Yeah. Good job, Megan.
And Angie, do you have a dedicated person who deals with
Sorry.
VHIP? Because obviously this is our biggest bang for our financial buck.
Yeah, so we have, in our homeownership department, we have a single person who oversees all VHIP operations, and then there's other homeownership staff. that
So when you say you're not investing in it, you do have a person who's.
Right now, we're 100% invested in that. That's operating fully. It's just if we have to start reallocating resources, we're picking and choosing.
Right, got it.
That's why we've been saying that the cascading effect of loss of federal funding means that a lot of the state relies on these nonprofit providers to carry out state programs like VHIP. And if they are struggling to that degree, it impairs their ability to just to function administratively in that role.
And we're nowhere close to that right now. I want to be clear, but.
Well, we are facing a situation of a government shutdown, which if it went beyond January 1,
We've got a lot of challenges.
yeah, we would have.
That is such a polite way of
Right,
putting
such a
it.
challenge is what a word.
Yeah.
Any questions of Angie?
Thank you. That was,
Thank you, everybody.
Many thanks.
thank you for your partnership. Yeah, and this is just on housing. Just think of our partnerships on mental health, on disabilities, on food.
So we heard from Evernorth, which is operating statewide, and then we heard from Chris and Angie and Michael, who operate individual housing providers at a regional And our last witness is Mira Weinberger who's been working on this effort, which has become known as Let Down Homes. Mira, as you know, this is a hearing on the effect of what's going on federally, and share your thoughts with us.
Great. Thank you, Chair Mahali. I really appreciate you inviting Let's Build Homes to come in and weigh in this morning. In a lot of ways, I feel like this effort, as you just called it, of Let's Build Homes started with you less than a year ago when just after our launch, you had us in to speak to the House General Committee. And just want to quickly say Let's Build Homes has come a long way as an organization. Since that, we now are an incorporated 501c4 organization. We have 3 people working for the organization, and we're really we really appreciate you inviting in and hope you will think of us whenever housing issues are up for discussion, that we be one of the groups that come in and share the perspective on how to ensure that we are making progress with permanently affordable housing and the overall supply of homes in the state, which is at such an acute shortage and very problematic state right now. I agree with your recent op-ed, Chair Mahali, that we are just at the beginning of that work. We have a long way to go with it, and we are trying to build this organization to be around for the long haul and be a partner with you, just as you have partners on environmental issues and historic preservation issues and conservation issues. Let's Build Homes wants to be there as you over the long term work to solve our housing shortage. We understand how painful the topic is that you're dealing with today, and the human toll of that the Section 8 and other federal actions are already having and threaten to have even more acutely in the months ahead and years ahead. And we certainly, just as last year, our new coalition supported work that you took on in the Budget Adjustment Act and then the final budget to ensure that we continue to make strong public investments in permanently affordable housing. We're going to support strong action in that direction again, and appreciate you pulling in this early work to be trying to figure that out collectively. Another way to mitigate this pain, not on quite the timetable of a lot of the discussions this morning, but on the medium and longer term, is to meet the state housing targets that you have set and that have been put out there in the law now, that and dramatically expand the supply of homes of all shapes and sizes for all of our neighbors. It is the shortage of homes, the acute shortage of homes, and the cutthroat competition for the homes that do exist that is resulting in the kind of impacts we just heard about from Angie, where now we're finding ourselves in the situation of even middle class households are needing subsidy to be able to compete in the current market. And the way to address that is to get our state subsidy and investment right. And it is also to stay focused on the supply expanding interventions the state can make in this upcoming session. So I do just want to briefly say, I think you should feel very good about the work you did on that with the creation of the CHIP program last spring. I've been all over the state this summer talking to communities throughout the state and at the Vermont Development Conference last week, and there is an enormous amount of enthusiasm and interest in that program. I think you are going to see as soon as that program opens in January, because of the hard work that Betsy and your colleagues that served on that committee through the summer did. I think there's going to be a high interest in that program as soon as it opens in January. And I think that is going to be a way for Vermont that is going to give Vermont a tool for charting its own future, even as the federal government becomes a less reliable partner. We are working on additional ideas for you that will add to that ability for Vermont to really chart its own course. Certainly, more work needs to be done to make good on the promise of Act 181 and the HOME Act. Those landmark pieces of legislation, we're living with them now. We're getting into them, and I think it's going to be important to make updates and clarifications and maybe some expansions of what you did with that work to get that regulatory reform to work. We are also looking at other states who have financial tools that Vermont does not have today to ensure that even as the federal government pulls back, even as there's a broader slowdown in the market, when we're at this point in the business cycle, where banks are expanding their equity requirements and where debt is more expensive, and as we're dealing with these new headwinds from the tariffs, that we can keep making progress with this new consensus that we want more homes, that we have housing targets we want to meet. We think there are tools like a state housing acceleration fund that can use other parts of this state's strength that are not tied to subsidy, but are tied to the state's strong balance sheet, the state's ability to take some risk sharing, and state's access to low cost debt. That will be new tools in the arsenal for the state to keep making progress. So that's my big picture message here. I don't have all these details worked out. We are working hard with them, and we will have proposals from us very soon. But that's sort of where we're at.
Right.
Questions?
I'm just curious, Moreau, are you, I'm very excited. The guidelines are, we're going to have guidelines. They're on target timeline to get those done. Betsy's done a great job, and that subcommittee's done a terrific job. As they hit, what's Let's Build Homes doing to help think how we help our smaller towns navigate these? And I think that's going to be a key piece for you guys, could be, because so many of you are so embedded with municipal understanding of municipal needs. That is going to be a big piece of what we're going to need to help people on. And I think that would be, if we would look to you for help on that.
Totally agree. I think there is good news coming out of that BEPC process that I think they kind of took your legislative mandate to draft rules that should be usable by a much broader range of municipalities than what the prior TIF program was usable for. They have worked to make sure that rural communities, that the types of costs that only come up in a rural setting, like community septic and community water, are eligible to be used by CHIP projects. And they have worked to keep the things like the BUT forecast clear, straightforward, and predictable how it will be.
And the common good and the public good broad.
Exactly.
But
I think
in terms of the help.
Yeah. Great news is happening, I think, out there organically, in that I know the League of Cities and Towns is working very hard to provide that technical advice. I know because you allowed kind of technical assistance to be an allowable cost under that, the private sector is stepping up to be able to fill there. I think you're right. Let's Build Homes. Here's where I think we can provide where we're seeing our niche in helping this move forward is on the sort of municipal side, and being able to work with communities as they're trying to make a decision to go forward with this or not. We want to be a resource for that kind of select board level decision making, and making sure that local housing groups are aware of these decisions and engaging them. So
Maybe even helping form housing commissions in small towns. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's pretty exciting the way people are stepping up to fill that gap, and we'll keep watching it. There may be a need for, I don't know, there's some talk out there that maybe some additional kind of capacity for this program in one way or another might be helpful. But I think what you've done already has launched it in a really good way.
That'll evolve, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think I'd be really interested in seeing your state housing acceleration fund idea.
Great.
Just so you know, although the session doesn't start until January, our deadline for putting bills requests in is December 1.
Yes.
And as a practical matter, I have viewed November as our key time to really try to concretize our agenda for the coming year. So the sooner the better.
Understood. And we we are aware of the advance of time here and working
So-
hard to.
On that, we should
Yeah.
speak after this
Yeah.
because some of us are working on a permanent source of funding for state housing support. So
Great,
it would be, that's what I think one of our key challenges this year is to
great.
find that additional money.
One other question I have. You've been privy to, because you've been sitting here, a lot of the testimony that we've had today has really been on how fundamentally disruptive it would be to our providing housing to, you know, a very substantial part of the middle class of Vermont if we lose the Section 8 vouchers. And the Section 8 vouchers, we've received testimony, we lose them every year. It's been a downward trend. And we lose them because for complex budgeting reasons at the federal level.
Excuse me.
But every year it's sort of 500 less. I mean, I'm using round numbers. And one way out of that for us is to leverage federal money by putting state money in indirectly. Let's Build Homes has been focused, as you said, on the middle and longer term. And one of the things I would like you to think about is whether you want to be an advocate for that kind of state spending now, because it's such an unusual situation.
Yeah,
I realize that every nonprofit has to avoid mission creep and stay focused.
right.
And so do we, I guess, but I'm just raising that issue for you to
Yeah.
think.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I want to reiterate, like our mission statement is explicitly to support the creation of more homes of all shapes and sizes for all of our neighbors. And certainly that includes and is always going to include public investment in permanently affordable housing. And I do think it always was a frustrating thing for me as mayor to know that we were not able to fully leverage the federal resources that were out there with some of these vouchers, the support because of the wraparound supportive services. And it was a nut we tried to crack and it was very difficult to crack. And I take your point, and if we can play a productive role in helping, make sure that we're fully utilizing those resources, we'll talk to our colleagues and we certainly will be there cheering on this effort. It's just something we can do to really help get it done. We will definitely look at that hard and try to do that.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So, we actually managed to,
You were a great timekeeper. Look at
well, people I'm sure will enjoy getting out a little early. But I would like to ask members of the committee at this, Emily's plotting. Get your face on, Emily.
All right.
I wanted to use some of this time, and not that I feel like we have to use every second, but to ask committee members to let you know a little bit about what we've been working on during the summer and the fall, and sort of issues that people have raised that are out there and that I think are going to come at us during the session, and to hear from you priorities that you have. I guess what I'll do is I'll run through a list of issues without really annotating them, because you all know what they are, just to explain them enough. So one issue we have is landlord tenant, something we didn't take up last year. A member of this committee, a distinguished member, has a bill on the wall, and there's another bill on our wall. And I know there are other bills in the Senate that are coming along. And the chair of the Senate committee, who's with us today, has taken a strong interest in this. And so we may see action in that area. It's my fond hope that we can address this in a balanced way that addresses both the needs of landlords and the needs of tenants. An unbalanced bill probably won't go anywhere, so we'll see what we can do. Abandoned homes. There are two approaches to that. One involves the creation of a land trust. That's a report coming to us after the session begin in 26. So that's not with us right now, but we are looking at the idea of streamlining tax sales for homes that are abandoned. Literally, nobody, the owner is out of state, or, that nobody's living in them, they're falling apart and they're not paying their taxes. Looking at ways to get those into private homes through tax sales that are appropriate. Manufactured homes, Gail is working very hard and has been all summer on the whole manufactured home situation. It's a crazy kind of Wild West area where there isn't a lot of uniformity. And we've been in discussions with bankers, their lawyers, talking to who are lenders, looking at what we can do to make it easier to buy and to maintain mobile homes. I think it's there's what you think of as manufactured home communities in community parks, which we often say mobile home parks, but the point is they're not mobile. But there is also a broader range of manufactured homes. And the interesting thing about manufactured homes is unfortunately, they are the only form of home that we see in Vermont, which the average Vermonter could afford without subsidy.
Right.
Literally the only form. So it's something worth looking at, and we'll be thinking about that.
And even they are becoming way above, unaffordable to the crowd Angie just talked about.
Yeah, and they're getting it's $200,000 to get into a mobile home. So then there's the whole issue of rural finance. This is a pet project I know to Tom. And we came away feeling last year that CHIPS was a really good step forward, but that even with a lot of technical assistance, it's pretty complicated. And that we would like to see whether there are other things that we can do to make financing projects in rural areas that are 10 units or less easier. That's in its infancy. I don't know how far along that will be, but we'll see. Tom, I will be briefing you on what I know so far. Appeals. You remember last year, as part of our bill, we addressed the appeals issue in this house. We addressed the standing issue, and we came up with a standing approach that would make it, we felt, a little harder just to throw in a challenge to a project that had no basis. The whole appeals issue was punted to the Land Use Review Board, and they have a report due, thanks to us, not in next year, but due on the 15th of this month. And I believe they are more or less on time. We've seen the draft report and it's pretty good, but it's going to need legislation and work, and it will deal with the issue of where appeals are tried and how they are tried and what the standard of review is, all in order to try to shorten the time frame from what is now like very often 300 days for a housing appeal to a much shorter one. Emily.
Oh, I just wanted to talk about appeals for a second. Should I say it now?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to make it very clear that I personally am not comfortable leaving the session without addressing this. We have got to work on this. Last session, CHIP and appeals were top priority in the legislative work that I was happy with. And so I am hoping that both bodies will take this up and we will look at the report and really make sure that this is a priority. I think it's very important.
I happen to agree. I think that this is an area, it's coming at us, rightly so.
I don't think there's any way, Emily, we're leaving without
Yeah.
hopefully finishing this work on the appeals.
Maze, thank you.
I just don't see it happening. I mean, I think everyone wants us to come into agreement on that. And I think that the land use review board work is good and it's a great launching point
It's a
for us.
launching point.
It's a terrific launching point that way. And that's what we needed because we needed to, that's why we gave it to them to do the work. They're the professionals, they're full-time now.
So I think, the steps there, I've been in communication with our leadership in the House on this. We're gonna receive the report. We have to reduce it to a draft bill. And then we will have quite possibly joint hearings.
Oh, we'll
on-
definitely have joint hearings.
On the
Yeah.
subject. And it's a little complicated in the House because it involves three committees very actively. Us, environment, but also judiciary.
I'll just jump in and just say that I attended a really important panel on substance use and all the activity in our state to try to support folks and the providers that are working with that population. And one of the things that jumped out at me was that recovery housing is such a massive challenge, and appeals has a lot to do with the challenge of standing up recovery housing in our state. And so I think that there might even be opportunities to work with municipalities who have these little pots of money from the opiate settlement funds as well to stand up in a right? Because those dollars have to be used in a new and creative way. They can't just be added to the work and services that are already on the books. And so I think that that's an area where I think we should engage the League of, the cities and towns folks to help the towns not, sit on that money or use it improperly or, God forbid, waste it on something that doesn't actually help. And I think recovery housing is a great area for that too.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
it's also.
And transitional.
It's implicated by
Yeah.
landlord tenant
Yes.
law as well. That's,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, but a lot of it is also just, yes, right, it is implicated. And that was what some service providers, who are often themselves the population, that has benefited from the services, right? That's what they discussed. They discussed like the issue of being able to build, set up, or transition a building to be used for recovery housing, or also what happens when there's activity from tenants that puts the rest of the tenants at risk. And so that lands into the landlord, right? So we want to keep people safe. We want to keep people housed.
I have some additions to your list. once you're done.
Okay, another area, which is one where I'm not sure what we'll be doing, but I think there'll be something there, is the whole short-term rental question. And this is not an easy area.
Oh, as opposed to all the other ones?
Yes, yes, they're all easy.
Appealed.
But it's an area where there isn't consensus because I think the reason there isn't consensus is because there are such important regional differences in approach, need, attitude, et cetera. There is a all-day, I spoke at length with the league, and there is an all-day meeting on this subject sponsored by the league. On Saturday, I will attend it, trying to figure out. I don't know where the consensus will lie. Last year, as you remember, we did propose that there be additional local taxing authority. That didn't make it through Ways and Means, but I will be revisiting it. I just have two others, and then I think you should add yours. Does that work?
Yeah.
As you can see, it's not like we have nothing to do. And one of the issues that's come up is housing for developmentally disabled. We're
working on it. Our task force, we're reviewing to next week,
so next week, the task force, a task force that was set up. You know, we ask these task forces to do something and then they do it, and it's really a problem. Anyway,
we have a draft report ready that we're reviewing tomorrow.
so we have a report coming and that will become an issue. We asked, as you may remember, like I said, be careful what you wish for. We asked Matt Chapman and others
Yes.
in ANR to tell us how they could really streamline the whole program. Brownfields program.
My favorite.
And guess what? He just sent us a
He just
report.
57-page report.
57-page report.
Thanks,
We're
man.
looking at that.
No, it's exciting.
Gail, yes.
Hi. So Gus had put up a map, and on it showed two developments of mobile home communities. How would I be able to get that information of where they were built? One was in Chittenden County. He flipped the to the next screen, so I wasn't really sure where the other one was.
Okay. Well,
I just would email him, Gail. I just email him or Polly and they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They'll give you more detail. But also, everything that happened today is right on the website, right? That's all, all the testimony is
Yeah.
on our website. So the map is there, but you can just email Gus for more details.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And finally, an issue that's out there is what I would call enhanced, and well, it's not a housing, I'll just mention it. More and more towns are trying to think of ways they can work with other towns to buy expensive material, buy things and to do things,
Our
services.
schools are working on that too.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
the
look at that.
BOCES, there's no
BOCES.
votes. There is something, it's 2 paragraphs long in the law that allows towns to collaborate called intermunicipal agreements,
Right.
and it needs work. And I don't know whether a number of towns have talked to me about it, and I don't know whether I'm gonna end up throwing a bill on that.
GovOps is sort of dealing
Yeah,
with this
but-
regional cooperation, mutual
Right,
aid. I mean, there
right.
are a lot of ways we need to regionalize, not just our schools, but our services as well, which are inequitably sprinkled around the state.
Right, I just mentioned that because it's of interest to me, I shouldn't have, because it's not gonna come to us. It would come to GovOps.
Emily's supporting
Yeah.
us.
Emily, okay. Yes.
So I
know
No, I
that
was just
you-
saying support.
Yeah, I like that. With Gail.
And
is
Gail,
Gail.
is your hand still up or did you just not take it down? You're muted, Gail.
think it's a legacy.
Take
A
it
legacy
again.
hand.
Okay, it's a legacy hand. All
A
right.
legacy hand. Oh my God, that's a
So-
frightening thought.
So, Madam Chair, do you have others and any other?
Well, there
I
are
know-
two other things. I mean, I think first and foremost, I think many of us are working really hard on trying to find a permanent source of funding for housing. We have the VHCB money, but we do not have enough. Now that all that COVID money is now being spent, we need to find a serious source of funding for housing, for affordable housing in this state. And that's one. And then the other thing I think we need to continue work on is the offsite construction. It's kind of a subcategory of manufactured homes, but it's an important piece, I think, of both economic development for us
Not
and
modular home, you mean modular like,
offsite construction, modular home pieces. Yeah, putting it all together. And that is slightly separate from manufactured homes, but it's a great economic development opportunity as well as it's not always cheaper, but it certainly could speed things up. And what else did I have? Chip cleanup, VHIP into the base. These are all just housing things. I really want to make sure we get the VHIP program anchored into the base. We're going to be doing some chip cleanup as those guidelines come to us and we get to review them. I'd love to get rid of the veggie. Oh, that's an economic development thing. And short-term rentals. I think, and yeah, I think you have hit them all that we have talked about. Except for
Elizabeth,
those
you want to repeat what you said to me earlier?
Well, I mean, it's abundantly clear that the Human Rights Commission is going to need our support in many ways. I heard from Representative Christie that the number of cases between August and today is 400 times what they had last year.
On housing?
Altogether.
In general.
Oh, okay, because it,
But also another piece of that is their fair housing support, which they are no longer going to be taking in money from HUD for because that has been fully cut. So we need to be mindful of that when we consider HRC's
right,
budget for this upcoming year.
yeah.
Yeah, and we will have to remember, everybody, we have to have a budget letter. And this year's budget is going to be a very, very difficult budget because every time we have to do something like support and should LIHEAP or SNAP or anything else, well, that's just that much less money that's available. Other members, maybe, yes, Ashley.
I think we'd be remiss if, like Rep. Krausner had said, we cannot leave without, talking about and kind of, coming up with better solutions to appeals, but we'd be remiss to not talk about permitting and zoning in that sense. Just the duplicative nature of permitting, what that means for our developers who are going through the same applications. And just paying that fee over and over and over again for the same information. And so I think it's kind of a broader conversation that, as we know, rarely comes to this committee, but I just don't think we can let that happen this coming session. I think, again, we have to have that, whether it's 3 committees, both House and Senate, I think we really need to establish that it's something that is expected for these conversations.
One of the things, just so committee members understand, and Tom, is your hand up?
Yeah, I don't know how to push the button, so
Yeah.
I'll do this analog. I want to echo Senator Clarkson's comment on offsite manufacturing. We did do a study looking at this and never followed it up.
Yeah.
We need to follow that up so we don't throw that money out the window, but also that represents a potential savings for rural communities in the sense that an order of, we don't have a number yet, but say 24 of the same unit can bring the cost down, and that can be passed on to rural communities that need 1 or 2 of those units. So I agree. We need to allow communities to collaborate, but also to continue to follow up on that. I also think that we need to really drill down on why it is so much more expensive to produce a unit of housing when state and federal funds get involved. Because my concern is we're spending a lot of money via housing on other things. And it looks like we're investing a lot in housing, but in some cases, we're covering the cost of additional administrative burdens and other legitimate concerns, other code compliance and certifications that drive up the price when we're involved. And because this is a crisis and not an inconvenience, we may need to make some adjustments temporarily so that the dollar goes further, faster.
Yeah, good point.
Emily, your hand is up, Emily.
It's not a legacy hand. It's just me wanting to take up more space. Yeah, I agree with all these points. And also, as Moreau mentioned and some others, that there may be some Act 21 cleanup too. So just keeping space for that.
Yeah.
And then the final thing, which I don't know if it's going to be a bill, but we had talked about, and I've talked to Cam about this, about just a briefing about HOA related things. I've been working this fall collecting some different data from different parts of the state around HOA, and I know that that was a discussion. Again, it's not like people are gonna die if we don't discuss it. You know, it's not of urgency, but after crossover, or after other times, I think there's time when we could kind of have a briefing on, we haven't talked about that in many, many years. And so there's some issues in my part of the state at least, and I've talked to my senators about it. So I would like to just have that still. I do have a bill on the wall as a vessel, but anyway.
Emily, thanks, because we heard testimony about some of the HOA, the Home Ownership Association, just for all these acronyms, associations needs. And it's clear we need to do some work on that. And I think there's a lot of interest in some of the Senate members of our committee working on that.
Fabulous. I just so happen 2 of them are my senators, so maybe it's a
just funny
coincidence.
thing about that.
Yeah, right? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Maybe that's why we heard so much about it.
Maybe.
So let me just yes.
I just have a question, and that is, are the issues that you outlined, the only issues that regarding housing that we're going to be taking up?
No, I didn't mean that as an exclusive list. It's the stuff that has come to me from people that needs work or that I've been working on. I mean, I think, for example, what Emily was just talking about has been on our wall. We have a short-term rental bill on our wall. You know, it's just one approach. I think, you know, other issues, that's why I want to hear from.
Yeah, I think everybody should, other housing issues, I think we're focusing on housing today, but I think, and we're gonna have to, this is an amazing list. So, and we have 5 months to accomplish them. So we're gonna have to figure out how to prioritize within that, but yeah, what are your other housing thoughts? Because
No, I just was, I have many other thoughts. I just wanted clarification.
Yeah.
That's all.
No, I'm just taking advantage, one of the fact that we're all convened a little early and before the craziness of the start of the session, to just think about these issues. One of the issues that we struggle, I'll use me, I struggled with an issue last term, which was my first one as a chair, which is that every time we look at a housing issue, some other committee is involved. In other words, and in fact, a lot of today, I went to the Health and Human Services hearing that they had last week, just because I didn't understand any of this stuff. You know, all the stuff about Section 8 and the subsidies and all of that was not part of, it's kind of not an area that I really fully understood. And in fact, I've talked to Teresa, the chair of the Human Services Committee, about coming in and just doing a morning with us and talking. The problem is procedurally, we cannot have dual or triple referrals in the House. It's not like a bill can be referred simultaneously to 2 committees. So it can be sequential, or we can hold joint hearings, et cetera. But I just wanted to tell you, I've been talking to leadership. I'm really committed to working together with other committees like Judiciary, Ways and Means, Environment, to try to make sure that we can work together and get bills out of here.
And even the Senate.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
speaking to them too.
Well, I just was talking about the House. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, but I think given how little time we have and how much we want to accomplish, we're gonna have to really work together, cooperate in a much more cooperative mode.
And
which we've started.
Yes, Senator Clarkson and I are in continuous contact. I mean, we talk, I'd say once a week, we're talking, trying to figure out some of these issues. So any last thoughts by committee members? We're 6 minutes over, but only 6 minutes.
And other housing priorities.
Randy.
I just have a few thoughts.
Yes.
Those are some underlying principles in which we may think about working. And the things that concern us as we look at a lot of this incredible detail. And the words that I would add, among others, would first and foremost is time. We often don't consider time as important as a lot of the things that we actually do. And what costs us money, you look at one of the projects that came on very, very early on the screen was a project that was done to build some housing, I believe, in Shelburne. How many years did it take to go through a permit process in order to get that done? And every time we do that, it adds cost by the virtue of inflation and other kinds, as well as the regulatory process that we put things through. That should be underlying our thoughts. The second should be accountability. When things don't work right, we need a clear method of accountability to determine first, is it not working as it should be? And who's responsible for it? And what do we need to change in order to move it along? We don't do that very well in the system that we have right now. We should talk about leanness. You take a look at the money aspect of housing, and the number of organizations involved in order to do that is staggering. And we ought to think about that. And because it's something that has existed here for years, doesn't mean it's a sacred cow that we can't slaughter if we need to, if it's keeping us from doing what we need to do. That's enough. I have a number of other words, but those I think are the most important ones. And above all, time. It really is money, and time is not getting things done. And that's where I see us being tied up consistently and not responding appropriately.
Time, accountability, and leanness.
Those are his mantras.
Right.
I know them by heart. And we need to address them. I mean, and I think that the time piece that is certainly, I think, what hopefully the appeals will do. I hope the landlord tenant work will do. I think we're working on that time piece also.
Process.
You know.
You invariably see projects that are in the approval process, but have to go through various stages of people, whether it be an A&R and others, to approve it. And it has to typically go in a sequential fashion. And of course, when you get to the next to the last step, that person, because there's only one person who does it, goes on vacation for 2 weeks and everything stops. That's what happens.
I think that's why my own feeling is why there's a consensus that we need to do something about how the appeals process works. And I think we do need to do something about the permit process. And the permit process, some of it has to do with the local level, but some of it's the state. And I'm personally was pleased that the governor has created an internal committee at a high level to work on processes of state permitting, because I think that's what it takes. It's really going to take an examination of how we do
Also, though,
things.
goes to the underlying issue of accountability. And accountability takes along with it measurement, that we should be able to measure how these projects are proceeding and to identify the roadblocks that are occurring on an ongoing basis that have an effect on this. And we don't have a good measure holding people and organizations accountable.
Thank you. Other members of the committee? Well, I'm delighted that we were able to get together. Thank you very much. I think it's safe to say we are adjourned until we reconvene in January. And we are